Hi everybody and welcome back to Capricorn Radio. This is your faithful host James, and I'm delighted to have my returning guest in the series of podcasts we are doing, Mr. Gerald R. Clark. And of course, you can check out Gerald's website, geraldclark77.com, to follow today's author. Don't forget to check out his blog while you're there. Some really interesting articles on what we're going to talk about today, and regularly updated as well. Gerald is a minefield of information and knowledge, and what the subject matter we're going to talk about today. Of course, we are talking about the Anunnaki and the legacy that's been left to us by them. Gerald's got 2 books, The Anunnaki of Nibiru, Mankind's Forgotten, Creators, Enslavers, Destroyers of the New World Order, and of course there is 7th Planet, Mercury Rising. That's his latest book. And it's a lot of what we're focusing on in these series of podcasts. Of course, we're getting much more into the book and the background information too. And it's, for me, I listen to the shows just before I do the next one, because I have to, and it's great for me, because the benefit is that this information is timeless, this material is timeless. It's been timeless since it was given to us 5,000 years ago. 6,000 years ago or beyond, and it's timeless now. It's the same information. It doesn't go out of date. There is no sell-by date on this information, and I think that's the most important stuff to mention. So, without further ado, let's bring on today's guest. Hi, Gerald. Very welcome back to the show.
Hey, my Irish brother James. It's always good to be back, and like you, I go back and listen to the shows just to get back on the same sheet of music where we left off, and it does require more work, but I think because of us doing that, it's having the effect that we both wanted.
Yeah, and like I say, Gerald, whether you read the book or listen to the audiobook or you listen to the shows, there's so much information in there. You couldn't possibly take it all in at once anyway. And to take it in again, Gerald, you get a different level or a different layer. There's just so much in there. We're talking some heavy subjects.
Just prepping for this show, I picked up a couple things that I really didn't comment on in the book that just filled in another layer for me.
Mm. Yeah, and whether you're talking about monuments, or whether you're talking about civilizations, or whether you're talking about the reasons why, whether being genetically altered or spiritual ascension or lost knowledge. It's all in here, Gerald, and it's all there, and it's all tangible. But you're going to have an intelligent mind to get through some of this material, and that's what I love what we're doing, Gerald. We're doing it in a productive, intelligent manner and a good dialogue too. So I'm really excited about today's show. We're going to talk more on the Emerald Tablets. We're going to get into some of this stuff, Gerald. Let's launch into it. Let's talk about avatars, Gerald, because this is kind of what we're going to focus on a bit today. Everyone's familiar with the Avatar movie. I actually had Michael Cremo on the show a long time ago, and he had mentioned the analogy of the Avatar. He's coming from the Krishna perspective, of course, and ascension, but he used the Avatar analogy that is so close to the truth we just don't even realize it. We're being given this in the movies and we don't even realize it, how close to the truth this is. You feel the same, Gerald?
Well,
you feel the same that Avatar movie is just right on par with what's possible?
Well, there's been a couple of them. I think the one that connects with me even more is the Matrix movie, how the people are used as avatars in there. Mm-hmm. And I think it predates the movie Avatar by quite a bit. And speaking of dating of the term, the fact that the term avatar shows up in the Emerald Tablets, and assuming that they're as old as he says they are, and we talked about that they were 50,000 years old when he left the Atlantis to go to the land of Chem, or Egypt. So using that term way back, in time is an amazing concept in busting the holographic simulator wide open.
Oh, sure. We're going to focus on tablets 2 and 3 today, and we'll play these at the end of our segments as well, so that people can get familiar with actually what we're talking about. But yeah, the Matrix, Gerald, I actually covered that on a show last week before I was traveling. From cinema symbolism actually was what we were focusing on, and all the symbolism that's incorporated into that movie. It's mind-blowing when you analyze it.
I actually, watching it recently, I'd seen it a long time ago, and I just watched it again with Krista recently, and the idea of avatars. Now you compare the way that the avatars where the protagonist had to use a telephone line to go back and forth from this dimensional reality, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas these agents could do it at will with any body they wanted. Did you notice that? Mm-hmm. They could take over the helicopter pilot. They could take over the bum that was in the alleyway. Mm-hmm. So really the avatar kind of capabilities that Thoth talks about in the second tablet is more like what the agents were doing. So at the beginning he talks about that they were observing mankind in this tablet and realizing how enslaved they were. And we talk about the method of enslavement, and he talks about the enslavement force coming from beyond. And that, I believe, is the same false Merkaba field that Drunvalo talked about that was holding everybody in a false state of illusion. Okay? Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden they're talking, Thoth is introducing the idea of these partners that are going to come with him, these agents, if you will, of light that are going to assist him. And he says there's 32 of them. And interestingly enough, when you include him in that, you end up with 33. Well, that's a pretty astounding Masonic number that you see on the temple. It's their highest degree, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I also noticed that in Atlantis they have their twin pillars that we talked about earlier, built out of orichalcum that were decorating Poseidon's temple, because that was Poseidon's kingdom, right? Sure. And we knew that Ningshita Thoth was Enki's son, so keeping that in mind when he refers to his father as various names, it's interesting how he keeps this Chinese wall between him and who his dad really is. I'm not sure why. Anyway, the point is, right in the beginning of the tablet, they introduced the idea of an avatar, because they describe their capabilities of being able to be in the Halls of Amenti. They renew their original body, but from there, they can travel, occupy the bodies of seekers, in essence. Those that are on a path to try to wake up out of darkness is how they describe it later. And they influence them to find the path that leads to the full activation of their light body so they can be one of them. Ultimately, that's what they're doing. Okay, this is what they were doing in the mystery schools. Okay, so here they are talking about all 32 of them having a particular seat, a permanent seat in the Halls of Amenti, where they're renewing their bodies just like Thoth is. And it's interesting because this flower of life symbol is the key to them renewing their life energy that's related to their chakras. So I sent you a document to show the flower of life. Oh yeah. And for those who don't know it, it was a symbol that Drunvalo got turned on to from a photograph he had taken in Egypt, and then they found it in other places in the world. Started connecting the dots to who the symbol came from. It turned out to be from Thoth. And he describes being illuminated about that symbol that led to sacred geometry, the measurement of the Vesica Pisces, and in general, this symbol encapsulates the chakras and the Kabbalah. So it's a very interesting symbol. And there was something else I was going to tell you about. Well, so the symbol represents the tree of life, which you see in the Sumerian edifice, is one you showed me from the Library of Ashurbanipal, where they're standing either side of the tree of life, right? Yeah, yeah. Well, it has the tree, and then it has a seed, and then then a flower, and then a seed. And then it represents a continuous law of creation, just like was encapsulated in the tarot card. That was the Egyptian law of continuous creation that was encoded in those cards. It's a much deeper encoding beyond reading it as a card. Sure. Okay. So the idea of avatars gets introduced very early in the tablet, and he's talking about in order for them to sustain their life that they've got to. He blasts a very large underground facility where the Halls of Amenti are located and connects it with and apparently it went from there all the way underground to somehow an underground city that was also accessible beneath Atlantis, if you read the text. So somehow these original lords of the 9 cycles that he refers to them later have occupied this place along with these 32 beings that he brought that sound like they were from Arulu. Okay, because he calls that his ancient home, and he talks about them being his brothers, essentially, his same akin as he is. So he's brought them from what sounds like Arulu, which, according to a chart we're going to look at later, is on the 6th dimension, down to the 3rd dimension here, to wake us up. And he's watching this war and the strife, blah, blah. And this goes all the way back to the end of World War II. And I didn't mean to surprise you with that, but this version of the enslavement that's talked about also has to do with essentially watching us use very complex weapons to destroy each other. And this actually caught the attention of the being referred to as the master in the dialogue and the diary from Admiral Byrd. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was very, very telling that he was traveling in an aircraft heading toward the North Pole. He lost control of his aircraft because his navigation equipment failed and got lost. Couldn't communicate back with the base. And next thing you know, he's over some valley with mammoths in it. It's warm. It's about 70 degrees. And he's like, wait, everything was ice covered just a little while ago. Where'd this come from? And about that time, he has an encounter with a couple of winged discs that end up at either side of him to escort him down to have an encounter with this being in this underground base. So keep that in mind as you're talking about now Thoth blasting an underground space, which apparently the Halls of Amenti and this area that he's talking about that he commemorates with the Giza Pyramid and the Sphinx, which is only a small artifact according to him on the surface to give you a location marker for the city underground, which apparently fills the entire Nile Valley, according to Jim Hertog.
Wow.
So he blasts this underground space so he can have access to the flower of life and renew his body just like they do. And there's a point where he's talking about concentrating galactic energy using crystals on the opening to this underground facility. And I thought this was really a nice lead-in for you to talk about some of the crystals and acoustics, or the acoustic healing and how that relates to sexagesimal number systems, if you're in a place to talk about it.
Sure. Well, crystal technology, it's something I've dabbled in. Actually, I was, funny you mentioned it. Let's go back to the library of Ashurbanipal. I was there the weekend for Anunnaki TV doing some stuff. It's up there. If people want to search the YouTube channel, you can actually watch the video loop that I put up there. And my other half was actually meditating at that flower of life, the tree of life there, Gerald, and she was like, she was really overpowered with the meditation she was doing there. It was pretty quiet in the museum, and we were lucky, but, I actually had noticed, well, my other half had noticed and pointed it out to me that some of these winged bulls, Gerald, at the other end of the library of Ashurbanipal are so tarnished, they look like they're like an off brown or a creamy brown. But they're actually made out of crystal, Gerald. They're actually fully solid pieces of crystal, which I never even noticed before. But to the ancient Egyptians and to the ancient Sumerians, they were masters of working with crystal, Gerald. From my master's degree in Research Science and Society, I studied the cylinder cells, and a lot of them are made out of unusual crystals. I actually have a video I just shot the weekend, Gerald, of a cylinder seal made out of rock crystal, 9 out of 10 on the hardness Moscow, and it's got a hole drilled through the center of it, a perfect cylinder, hole drilled through the center and carved. For me, it's one of the most important cylinder seals we have, because it's the hardest one we have, basically in engineering sense. But then you also have the layered lens, as it's called, or the Nineveh lens. Henry Austin Layard found it at Nineveh. So some people call it the Nineveh lens and some people call it the layered lens. But again, it's got this biconvex curvature on it that would create correct eyesight, or at least be an optical lens for perhaps a telescope or some sort of a corrective lens. Maybe you'd have to put it with another one to make something of an optical telescope, of course. But this has a beautiful curvature. And what I find so fascinating with this crystal lens technology, which is on display in the British Museum, I'll have that up as well. Hopefully, and this is what I love going to the museums. I keep going back and finding stuff in these museums. There's so much in them. But this layered lens, Gerald, I mean, the thing that makes you mind melt is that the tool to carve it or make it would have been more complex than the finished product. Because, and tools normally are, Gerald. I mean, you need something like a toroidal shape, a donut-shaped tool to carve that curvature of that lens. And then to have something that can carve rock crystal, well, it needs to be at least 9 or 10 on the Mohs scale. So therefore, it's even a more complex shape than the one that was used to make it. It's totally mind blowing, and the use of ancient knowledge of crystals, of course, the megalithic stuff as well. Not as much as some of the Egyptian stuff or some of the Sumerian stuff. But this use of crystals goes back a long, long way, Gerald, and it's, in some circumstances, like I just pointed out, incredibly sophisticated, high technology, in an engineering sense. Yeah. In an engineering sense, not.
Well, I wanted to touch a little bit more on that, because it ties together these two stories, the diary from Admiral Byrd, and I'm going to send a link to that. I mean, we might put it somewhere in the description for the show, where he's talking about a force field that not only brings his plane down while his engines are off, that's crazy, and barely, sets him down very lightly, but he also describes a force field that surrounds the entrance to the place. Well, here in the tablet, and he calls the guy the master, okay? So what I'm trying to tell you is that I believe the master he encountered is using the exact same technology and gives you the same message later in tablet number 12 as what Admiral brought in 1945. I think that's pretty crazy. So part of what he said was that they were concentrating this energy on the portal to the Giza pyramids leading into the Halls of Amenti to keep the dark forces out. So he was creating a force field, okay? Well, I just sent you also a link that Boeing just announced that they were able to get a patent to do this exact same thing. Now, their patent on their force field that they built, it's kind of not quite what Star Wars had in mind, but it's designed to keep the pressure wave from an exploding missile that might be causing an EMP or something like that, from those pressure waves punching through an area that's kind of an invisible force shield that they're generating for similar purposes. So, and whether it could keep the missile out or is not known, but it looks like it could keep the pressure wave that the missile creates out. So basically, to cancel a pressure wave, you got to sense it and then send it actually the opposite, right? So that's essentially what they're probably doing. But they got a patent for it, and I haven't read it, but I thought it was very interesting timing that they did that.
I've read the articles about the Boeing scientists, Gerald. They're incredibly interesting. Just for the listeners, it's not an impenetrable force field. However, it is designed to at least limit or reduce the force of destructive explosions or shock waves and stuff like that. But it's going in the right direction, Gerald. The technology, it will head there if they could master. They could master. But it's like everything, Gerald, in engineering or science. If you start the process, you will eventually master it to at least some high level. And that's going to take trial and error. It's like all engineering and all science. But incredibly interesting, this force field technology, Gerald.
Well, also this ability to concentrate galactic energy onto a crystal. Maybe they're using a focusing lens to use sunlight to light up a crystal. I'm not quite sure, but I was going to tell you, when I was a VP of engineering at LightPoint, we'd go back and forth to Dresden, Germany, where we set up our manufacturing facility. And our East German team there in Dresden, our facility, had a very close relationship with the Zeiss Optics folk out of Russia and East Germany. So in the free space optics business that we were doing, we were coupling a fiber from vertical cavity surface emitting lasers that were going into a multimode fiber, and then sending that through a focusing lens so you could send this infrared beam of laser beam over the air. So the idea of it concentrating the energy, the dispersion issues you got to deal with. I find it very interesting that if you think about the nature of various crystals, and you're talking about the platonic solids put together in using some cymatic vibration, right? Like, and then creating a very close bond that then is sensitive to a certain frequency or energy. And this was real popular in the alternative human energy field, like Reiki and stone healing using crystals. And there's a whole crystal therapy book that tells you which chakra and which crystal to use so they would use them to mess with the human energy ganglia as well. And so here the first alchemist, Thoth, is talking about how he uses crystals for energy generation, for protective shields, and apparently they were using it for remote controlling aircraft right out of the sky too. According to Admiral Byrd.
We have, and I mentioned this before in a few shows of my own and stuff, Gerald, and probably you as well, but the Tuatha De Danann, the Irish mythological gods, or semi-divine beings, they had force fields. This is in our literature, Gerald. This is in our, at least the first written accounts we have are 7th century Gaelic books wrote in Irish by monks. But the Celts were going back to the time of 1500 BC when they inherited the megalithic mounds of the Tuatha De Danann. And they talk about these guys having a magic force field. That's what the words translates as. It's like 7th century AD science fiction. But it wasn't done in the 7th century. It was only written down. They were old Irish tales that were written down. But they talk about the Celts having a magic, an iron sword that was able to breach the magic force field, and somehow the iron content, and nobody had iron until the Celts came with their iron sword, and they had a special sword with them, and it was only for that they were able to do something and breach their force field with the use of iron, and that's all in 7th century AD books, Gerald, which is mind blowing.
It is mind blowing because. Let's take it to the next level with this flower of life crystal that he's talks about that he's got set up in the Halls of Amenti. Mm-hmm. So he's got these 32 other beings that take an original body. They're not trading bodies, and they're living with that body in perpetuity because they've been able to expose themselves to the radiating energy that's coming off this crystal that he calls the flower of life. So here's another discussion of this crystal that's like the Celtic legend you're talking about. This energy field is not to keep them out, but it's actually to regenerate their bodies. So instead of, consuming Starfire gold and activating it like some of the other ones were doing it, they're getting it directly off this flower of life symbol. And this is the same place he's got to go every 100 years out of 1,000 to renew his body. Because you remember the last tablet, I believe it's the last one, where he said, he's going to have to leave and go to this underground chamber to renew his body. So he's going to be out of the loop for 100 years, even though he can roam around and be an avatar. Okay, so he can still. And the crazy thing about it is, it looks like he can be an avatar in more than one body at once. Now think about how hard that must be.
Gerald, we're talking about Thoth the Atlantean here. And the Halls of Amenti, Emerald Tablet 2, and that. And, I remember a long time ago, Gerald, I would hear people talk about mostly channeling. I never even kind of checked their source of where they got this from, and we're probably going to jump ahead here a bit, but they talked about Atlantis being destroyed and an explosion and abuse of crystal technology, and I was like, this is all hippy dippy, forget about this. Where's your source material on this? And I was like, I'm very left-brained, I'm very engineering, and I'm like, and I'd switch it off, that part of me, like, because, I like a bit of mystery, but if I need to see some meat and potatoes too, but, I don't scare away from that anymore, Joe, because this makes sense to me. This makes sense to me that, Atlantis may have fallen.
That chart I sent you from the resonant field imaging last time, I scanned it and sent it to you. So what you could do is you could take if you just wanted to do the chakras, you just measure the ones that are right up the middle, right? But you could measure all over the body and look at what kind of complex fields are going on. Cause you gotta think about the superposition principle when you've got multiple nodes that are resonating with their various frequencies. What happens when they all synchronize, And you think about a crystal as well. You can expose it to white light, and it'll some quick crystals like quartz will show you the separation of light into the 7 visible colors of the rainbow. Well, so now imagine, when you're not splitting it up, you've got white light that's mixing all those colors together. That's kind of the superposition principle, if you will. Well, it's the same thing that's happening in your body. So when these chakras are, I don't know, when they're all generating the right kind of light, it'll mix all together at the right nodal amplitudes. Hopefully it's aggregating, not troughs hitting peaks and producing flat lines, but if they're in coherence, phase coherence, the amplitudes will add. Okay? And then all of a sudden you've got this aggregation of the superposition principle of this light coming off your ganglia, just like a crystal shows when it separates white light. So, in other words, those chakras are designed to take you back to a place where you essentially are the most coincident with a light being, just like the tablet says. Mm-hmm. It's kind of an interesting reverse process, though.
Sure. You made something very important there, Gerald, and that's this living in the force field and generating the force field for the benefit of these avatars, for the benefit of this ascension, for the benefit of this spiritual well-being, the well-being of the body in a physical sense. And, the warmongers in us always think, oh, well, force fields, it's meant to keep people out, and it's not that. It's something totally different, Gerald. Like you just mentioned.
Well, these guys didn't have to have a spike stuck in the back of their head like they did in Avatar and also in the Matrix, right? They're just being the human antennas they took on Avatar bodies to replicate, and they're receiving this energy through their chakras, essentially. Through their meat modem.
Sure. The angle of the Great Pyramid is at a very specific angle. As you know, it's not, most people just think it's a 45, it's halfway point, but it's not. It's at 5150, 51 degrees, 51 seconds. But this, special angle is the best angle for reflecting radar. It's also got these very small, narrow chambers, shafts as they're called. And they're at a very special diameter of 35 centimeters, which is the exact angle for microwaves. And I think that these things were probably collecting the microwave background energy from, just the space, the galactic. And I think it was, been harnessing this to activate crystal technology inside, sound chambers, all sorts of weird. It's an acoustically tuned monument. I think this thing was emitting a frequency at the top of it, Gerald. And this was probably a force field generating. Maybe these guys were just living around the Giza Plateau. And I've personally been there on the Giza Plateau. I have a chunk of it. Actually, the whole of some of the Giza Plateau is on a crystal bed, Gerald. It's a natural crystal layer. I have a chunk of it in front of me here on the room, and
I've read quite a bit of theories about the angles of those shafts, what they were pointing at, what was going on in the Queen's chamber relative to hydrogen ions being mixed with microwave energy to generate, or water being mixed at a certain with another element, so that they were generating hydrogen, that they were using power, and the idea of using the acoustic chambers with multiple crystals that were at various harmonics as either communication or energy generation and ascension. Thoth tells us that later in the tablets that, if you lay down in here and blah blah blah, I'll have an encounter with you and I'll wake you up in this chamber. So it was always a temple primarily for ascension, and I think it had many other advanced energy interactions with matter, demonstrations of its magic science that we both are alluding to.
Sure. And to add to that, there's a great book called Seeds of Plenty. And it's about putting seeds at ancient temples and pyramids, in particular. Some are activated and some aren't. Some are still activated today. And you can go and you can measure the electromagnetic energy of the Earth coming online at its biggest change during the day at about 4 a.m. It's 3:37 a.m. But as a result, when you put seeds there, they harness the energy of the pyramid. And when you plant those seeds, the ones that were, and you take ones that aren't near a pyramid and you put ones on a pyramid, the ones that have been on the pyramid have a 30% higher yield, proven in the lab time and time again. And I just can't help think that it's when this thing was activated and fully functional, I think the health and the well-being of everybody around that Giza Plateau and around this energy field, this force field, that would have been naturally generating, which, by the way, happens off all high streets. The Empire State Building has its own weather system at the top of it, and all skyscrapers do. There's a natural energy field around all structures. It's just the more crystal in it, or the more metal in it, the more it's going to affect, and the taller the object, or the shape or the geometry of the object. So this isn't new agey, or this isn't alternative science.
No,
this is mainstream.
You're just describing the basic understanding of a lightning rod. If you've got a rod stick around and you stick it up just high enough, those positive electrons are emanating out, attracting the negative electrons that are caught in the capacitive moisture of a cloud. So you take a tall antenna and you have part of it touching the ground and stick it up in the air, you're going to have a difference in electrical potential like a battery. So there's energy there, and this is the same kind of thing that Tesla noted as well.
Another thing I looked at as well, Gerald, and I'm kind of going off topic, but I like this force field business because it just makes so much sense to me now, Gerald, and I know that there's a high magnesium content on those casing stones as well, and there's a high calcium content for the limestone as well, for the core masonry of the Great Pyramid. The casing stone is a high magnesium content. Did they choose that directly, and would it act like a capacitor or a battery? I don't know. I mean, there's all sorts of weird stuff going on with crystals and metallic contents in the stone.
Well, just another point to that is, recall when Thoth showed up in the last tablet, and everybody came out to attack him with the bludgeons and the spears, and he used a crystal weapon of some sort to freeze him in place, the stones of the mountain, right? So he's using some energy devices that are even able to incapacitate a human without hurting them. And I find that pretty interesting.
That's incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah. But so later in Tablet 2, it starts talking about almost these tenets for living right. But before he gets to that, he kind of gives a clue about the avatars that they decide to interact with that don't know that they're actually taking on bodies of men. They look like men, but they're actually, these advanced light beings that are masters of the cycle. So these 32 avatars have certain capabilities, probably like Thoth. But then, when we'll get to it in the next tablet, he starts talking about the cycle controllers that also share the Halls of Amenti with these other 32. So you kind of get a full layout of the big dogs that are in there and who they are. So one of the key things that comes out that they're talking about them being avatars and their mission of coming here to wake up the enslaved and turn them back on to being the light beings that they are designed to be, is an instance from the creator of all. Okay, that's what they're referring to. So one of the things that they say is that the ones that grow out of darkness are the chosen for help along the way. Now, and if they achieve their goal, whatever it is along the way is, mastering the external and then becoming, like, going down the path Thoth did, they said, they give them a new title and they call them a Master of Life. And that makes them ready for contact with, the Infinite One. It's basically what it it gives them a new kind of ascended status where they can have higher contact with beings that are more, I don't know, over the striving against their brother, and they're more about elevation of consciousness and living a spiritual life, right? So these are the more ascended beings. So basically he's saying that that's the status that we can achieve in life if we're striving, the ones that are making progress out of growing out of darkness. They're not saying you've arrived. They're saying you're fighting the heroic fight to transform Well, if they see you doing that, they're going to intercede and help you, is what I'm telling you. That's what he's saying here. And I think I've seen that in my path. I think you've seen that in your path, haven't you?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. I think everybody who's experienced that realizes there's some force there that will facilitate you doing the right thing if that's what you've chosen to do. And that usually means standing up to darkness of some sort. Anyway, so I thought that was a really interesting thing to talk about as the end goal. He tells us we're going to have darkness poured on our path and a little bit. So, and the closer you get, this is the trippy part. Whenever you get to a stage where you've gotten to this spiritual goal achieved, right at that point, and very shortly thereafter, you're going to get darkness poured on you. So it's going to shut that down and cause you to have to keep this transmuting process going. It's a whole lifetime thing. And there are who knows how many levels of consciousness there are. But just because you accomplish a spiritual goal, it's not time to gloat around and be happy, because you better put your full armor on, because you're about to go to the next level again. So it just keeps repeating like that. So that's been my experience as well. And Krista's too. We were talking about that today, how funny that is when you get to this place where you're just singing, oh, you've landed in utopia, and then here comes the next thing. So you don't get to experience it for very long. So the time must be short to get to a higher place where they want us to be. Hey, one other thing I was going to say. So the twin pillars of Atlantis is kind of representative of the number 11, right? And we'll see later that there's these three aspects of the creator of all that just show up over and over and over again. I think we already did that, didn't we? No, we're going to do it. So if you take 3 times 11, you end up with 33. I thought that was really interesting.
Oh, the numerology is incredibly important, Gerald. It's always the same numbers. It's 7, 12, 33. These numbers just
22. Yeah. Well, it turns out I went and looked that up. We were going to do that on a show. We talked about like the first one doing numerology and what was important about number 11 and 22 and 33. And I sent you a link on that, but I remembered 33 being the master's number. Well, now all of a sudden you see this term, the master, show up in Admiral Byrd's dialogue, and he gets called that. Oh, so you end up becoming a master of life. So this term master is very important, and it has a lot to do with a term that's used for Thoth over and over.
Wow, it's incredible. It's incredibly profound knowledge of ascension and incarnation or reincarnation, whichever way you want to look at it, Gerald. And just for people out there, Gerald, I mean, I always like to throw in a bit of science. There's, I've looked into from a scientific perspective, the evidence for incarnation, or reincarnation even. And there's a lot there. There's more there than people actually realize. I think the term is xenoglossy. That's Xeno glossy. Xenoglossy is basically when people are able to speak a language that they've never heard before in their normal state. And there's example of, I think the best example is of, 2 kids, born in New York twins speaking Aramaic to each other, having, dead language, having no actual contact with anybody who speaks Aramaic. Incredibly bizarre, Gerald, that this goes on and gets no attention, it gets no attention. So I just want to put that stuff in there, Gerald, because it's important so people don't think we're just getting, so excited about some tablets where there's no proof of this. There is proof of incarnation and reincarnation, and look at the Dalai Lama. When he gets chosen, he has to go and pick his previous artifacts where only the monks know. Incredibly unique situation where they reincarnate. The Dalai Lama reincarnates each time, and he gets to choose his previous objects, his favorite toys, and only his close associates would know. And they get the kid to choose it, and they take the kid away, and he becomes the next Dalai Lama. Incredibly interesting. Yeah,
well, when we play the tablet later, and I think I've said this multiple times. Of course, I'm an engineer, so I focus on this. But understanding, differentiating the fire from the earth, or where energy meets matter, he tells you that's the secret to understanding this avatar capability, this higher dimensional interchange with these host bodies. I call them meat modems. Okay. And And so distinguishing energy from matter is very important, and he talks about that in the tablet as well. So when you do that, all of a sudden you go back to the Adapa tale where, this energy from this one being was taken out and put into the Adapa. Well, that was the creation of the first avatar in front of you, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it was documented. So now you come back to the Emerald Tablets and you see Thoth talking about 32 avatars coming with him, plus he later goes on in the next tablet and talks about these 9 other ones that never even took on a body. They're always in an energy form, constantly roaming, watching the progress of mankind, blah, blah, blah. So we'll jump ahead. We don't want to jump ahead too much, but I want to establish some relational stuff because of the terms he uses here, right? Now, we know that Ningshita is Thoth. We've documented that all the way from Enuma Elish forward to the genetic upgrade account to Egypt, or to Atlantis. Sure. He calls himself Thoth the Atlantean. And then he goes back to Egypt where he becomes the god Thoth there, right? So, he's talking in this tablet 2, about the dweller of the Atlantis temple. Well, we know that's Enki. That's Poseidon. That's his dad. So, why he doesn't call him dad is quite interesting to me, but he kind of builds this little Chinese wall. And he actually gives him another name and tells him he's the son of Thothmi. So it's like this derived name Thoth came from his father, and he's telling you another name for Enki that I didn't even know. So anyway, a lot of detail is given to us by Plato and Solon and Timaeus about the nature of this of Poseidon's Atlantis. Okay, so Thoth was born there, right? So he's later, as he grows into wisdom and he's studying all this ancient knowledge, he talks about being summoned to some ceremony where he was going to be designated one of these masters of life, meaning he could take on a body whenever he wanted, leave the body whenever he wanted, but his energy would be eternal and available to do these missions just like these other 32 were doing. Mm-hmm. So this is a ceremony that's going on eventually in Tablet 2, and none other than Poseidon himself shows up, is even more capable than Thoth is, which is even hard to imagine. And the discussion in the tablet where he does the handoff and says, I'm giving you the keys of the kingdom, calls him the son of man, all this kind of stuff, direct analogy to kind of the New Testament teachings about Jesus. It's just mind-blowing. So, next, in this process of getting this capability, this ability to renew his life and his, assigned, function that he's going to do, before he does that, he gets taken to meet this master of darkness, because in order for him to make this soul contract where he's never going to be recycled again, I guess, if you will, he gets summoned by this dweller, who is Poseidon, taken to meet one of the lords of the 9 cycles that get really detailed in the next tablet. But he introduces you to their names in this tablet, and that's Untanas, Huertas, Tieto, Goiana, Huertal, Semveta, and Ardal. Okay, and these guys show up again in Tablet 6. Now, these, just to remind people that are listening, those are the names in ascending order from your root chakra number 1 up to number 7, the beings that are controlling this consciousness level that we experience in the hologram. Very powerful information. So Thoth is getting taken to meet the one who controls the first chakra, whose function is to veil, in other words, keep man in darkness. That's his job. Think about that. He holds the key to the hidden magic and the halls of the dead, this first one. Untanas, okay? He's your root chakra. And the reason I bring that up in my first book, right toward the end of the book, I went and looked up the Hindu gods that were affiliated with each chakra, and I thought, well, is that just another AKA list of these lords of the 9 cycles for these Hindu gods that are affiliated with the chakras? So The first one was affiliated with Lord Ganesh. The second chakra for Quertos, okay, so that's Thoth. Another name for him is Ganesh, possibly. Quertos, Lord Vishun. Chiatal, which was the third chakra, would be Mahorura Sattva. The fourth chakra, Goyana, would be Ishhara, okay? And then the fifth chakra, Huertal, according to the Emerald Tablets, is in control of that. He's number 7, okay? He's the seventh sun cycle lord, or sun cycle lord. Okay, well that was Sasha Shiva, according to the Hindu god, that controlled that chakra. And then the sixth chakra, Samveta, in the Hindu religion, that was Shakti or Devi. Both of those gods controlled that sixth chakra, that, your third eye. And then the final one, the top one, Ardal, is described as the chief of the lords of the 9 cycles. And in the Hindu religion, that's Lord Shiva. So I thought that was really interesting to say, well, are those AKA list names? Also, I wanted to comment on something that came to me, is that they start with the cycle member of these lords of the 9 cycles from 3 to 9, but they don't tell you about number 1 and 2. Well, and it's getting ahead of ourselves just a little bit, but I think it's worthwhile to think about.
Sure.
Later in the tablets, it describes 14 lower dimensions and 9 parallel dimensions to the Earth. So my supposition is, since those are dimensions that are not accounted for here, that number 1 and number 2 would be assigned to, number 1 would be assigned to the lower dimension. Okay? And then number 2, of the 9 lords that are listed, he would probably get the parallel dimension. I'm just guessing. Okay? But there's a hypothesis for someone to fill in what happened to the, number 1 and 2 and they start off right going. So I think because we're in the 3rd through the 9th Mayan sun, which will map to these cycles, I believe, that's why we're only given 3 to 9, which is 7 more chakras. So we started at the 3rd cycle because we're already above the lower dimension and the parallel dimension, or at least a part of it. Or we're the highest point in the 9 parallel dimensions, so we would start at number 3, giving us only 7 more to get to 9. I think that's why they did it. I'm just guessing. It's my hypothesis anyway.
Mm.
Okay, so Thoth gets taken to this hall where he's going to meet Thoth, the Dark Lord, and very descriptive encounter. Basically, Enki himself has to be there to light up the chamber so that the darkness is demonstrably more capable than light. And in this telling, basically Enki tells him, this one is a child of the light, don't touch him anymore, he belongs to us. That's essentially what he did. And the whole telling of it in the tablet's pretty neat. So, after he gets this designation, at this point, he declares what his mission's going to be, which he says he wants to be a teacher of men to raise them to the light. Well, this is exactly what he did in the land of Egypt when he set up the mystery school. So this is the oath he made to his dad right before being sent from there 50,000 years ago over to the land of Cam, where he says he ruled for 16,000 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the last time we did that, we said, well, that puts you at 50 minus 16,000 is about 34,000 years. And so we were trying to jive when the Giza pyramids and the Sphinx were built. And that's when I did that little zodiacal update for you and sent it off to you to show, and rewound the zodiacal house back twice using the non-equivalence model. And it should work with the equivalence model too. I gotta check that though. But it landed you right in the house of Leo, which was the lion body that we saw in the Sphinx. And he told you the head on it wasn't a lion, he told you it was his face.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was pretty clear. And so the fact that he says 36,000 years ago he built it, you go to the zodiacal wheel or wind it back and lands in that same house, I think it's right. So it's pretty, it's pretty controversial knowledge to say that, well, here's the proof that the Giza pyramid and the Sphinx were built 36,000 years ago, just like Thoth said, by him, the builder. So there's just two corroborating pieces of information.
Incredible stuff, Gerald. Incredible stuff. And of course, you mentioned Poseidon there, and what grabs me when we talk about this stuff, Gerald, is all these different cultures around the world. They're always talking about having gods, and as if that wasn't bad enough, the gods are all very similar in description to each other, for obvious reasons that myself and you know, Gerald, but for the benefit of the audience. So all these figureheads or these gods are all very, very similar in descriptions of who they are and what they do, and even their artifacts that they parade around with and their weapons. But then they all have the sons or daughters that are demigods. And the idea of a demigod lineage popping up in Greek, Norse, Irish, the Shatanta was a demigod from the sky god Anu, a direct relation there.
Adam to Noah. In Genesis is the same telling. You know, you see the long ages of these demigods until the DNA got or intermixed to the point where their lifespans were shortened. So, you know, closer to the genetic archetype they were, it seems like the longer natural ability they had to have long lives. Now, whether they got to go to these, all of them got to go to these renewal chambers and live for a long time like these ascended masters, I don't think they did.
Yeah. I know, well, obviously in the Sumerian tale we have Adapa and Gilgamesh, for fine examples, but, I mean, this, from what I see, the Chinese records have a demigod lineage as well. Some people in Java and Japan talk about demigods as well. So this is a global system of practice and knowledge is the point, and it's about ascension. It's about, and like you point out, Gerald, in previous shows, I mean, it's one thing to adjust the telomeres and the little caps at the end and repair them and stop aging. Well, it's another thing. It's another level above that to be able to jump in and out of bodies as an avatar, Gerald. It's an incredibly jump in sophistication. One is sciencey, and one is spiritual science, if you want to call it that, Gerald. One is just pure science of stopping the physical decay of the genome, in the aging process. But this spiritual ascension business, Gerald, this avatar. And knowledge. I mean, this is the most prized thing you could ever ascend to in any, pardon the pun, ascend to in any civilization, in any level of technology. I mean, what good is the trappings of a physical technology to you if you're going to die out as a species? You know, if you're able to master your own incarnation, when you're going to live forever, it's a timeless thing. And it's kind of what's touched in that movie as well, Jupiter Ascending, which is focusing on a lot of this stuff as well, the aging process and ascending and all that.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, if you go back to Hathor's temple when they were consuming these monoatomic bread cakes made from gold, well, they were doing to prolong their lives and affect their telomeres, which may have come from the heightened electromagnetic conductivity of their electrical body, whether it's their cerebral spinal fluid that now has monoatomic elements in it so that the electrons zing through there without much impediment. It's not really known, but they were using it not just for prolonging their life, but also for expanding this spiritual experience, this energy retention ability, because it's been reported by a lot of people that, consuming that really magnifies your energy body. So that's why a lot of people use it as well. And that would help you with, if you had some fluctuations in the gravity field due to an asteroid going by or whatever, maybe you had to have a way to amp up your meat modem energy level so that all your telecommunications and remote sensing, all the other advanced mental functions that you had, worked better when you did that. Well, possibly they would use that in supplement with having to take off and go to a chamber for 100 years to completely renew their body. From a cellular level, probably everything got replaced. We know in the human body that happens with food in 3 to 6 months, at a cellular level. So why they had to do it for 100 years is not completely clear to me. And also remember, he talks about sleeping with your head to the north and your head to the south. I think we covered that before for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
a day, and almost treating us like a battery relative to the magnetic field. So magnetism is a big part of our experience as well. And he talks about that we talked about that in The Construct of Man in chapter 3, recall?
You know, Gerald, if we were given, as a species or a civilization, if we were given a spaceship that could travel at the speed of light, it would be, and told to go and conquer the universe, if you didn't have to worry about the vastness of space to travel, we could go in an instant. We couldn't do it. We couldn't do it because we'd have to be able to master electromagnetic energy, and we'd have to be able to master gravity. In a knowledgeable sense, that we wouldn't be able to get off that spaceship onto another planet until we mastered the different gravitational issues, or the lack of gravity, or the lack of gravitation.
It's funny you bring up gravity. It does show up in Tablet 2, I believe it is, where he talks about we couldn't exist unless we had something that we could push against, like a pressure experience. Mm-hmm. Which I found very interesting. And in a couple of shows, I talked about reading a book called The Final Theory by Mark McCutcheon. And his first chapter was what drew me in, and he was talking about nothing but gravity. And I have to say, as a structural integrator for many years, and playing with gravity, relating other people's bodies to gravity, looking at it with a plumb bob, a grid chart with differential scene viewing, like with a movie script or a movie frame, in order to detect the difference. I have the software to do that. But I've looked at the human body relative to gravity a lot, and then trying to understand what this force is that either you're at war with or it's helping your energy body. There's no in between. Okay, there's hardly any in between. So this idea of gravity that he talks about seemed to coincide with the model that Mark McCutcheon had. And I don't know if we did this before. Maybe we can do it just real quick and then play the Emerald Tablet 2 so we can get on to 3. Sure. But he describes gravity as being, and I'll just tell you right now, he describes it as an atomic expansion rate that turns out to be the same force that we assign to little g, which is 9.8 meters per second squared. And we call it an accelerated force. So what he's saying is, if all matter is expanding at the same rate, this accelerated force of expansion, then relative to everything else you're looking at, if all matter is expanding and you're expanding, you wouldn't be able to detect the difference. That's the first premise, okay? You with me?
Oh yeah, totally.
Okay, so then he says, now consider that if that's true, consider yourself a little speck. I like to call it a beach ball, something that people can visualize it expanding. Okay? And then on top of that beach ball is a very large ball, a rubber ball, that can be blown up, and they're both expanding at the same rate, right? And that big one is the Earth. And the little beach ball is you, standing on the Earth. Okay, so imagine it straight up and down, on top, stacked on the beach ball like a rock, so it's not going to fall off, or it's stabilized in some way, without adding more pressure. Well, what happens when the two balls are inflated at the same rate? What does the little ball feel relative to the big ball? Primarily, because it's a much bigger geometry. Mm-hmm. The little ball is going to get pushed up, right? At some expansion rate, almost completely experiencing the expansion rate of the bigger one as a pressure, because they're touching. You understand what I'm saying?
Oh,
so
yeah.
So it's the same experience as you going up in an elevator really quickly. You feel like you're being pushed down, and you experience that as a false sense of a G force, right? Relative to this vertical shaft or this vertical elevator that's going up. Well, it's exactly the same analogy to a large beach ball that's being blown up, the small one being pushed up like you in the elevator, and you feel the force downward of this expanding geometry of this planet that you're on. That's his theory, okay? Well, we know all matter is expanding, even light that we can measure through this I don't know, red shift, if you will, the aging of light and these measurements they do. So most scientists believe that all matter is expanding. And so based on that, his theory to me made more sense than the tetherball theory from Isaac Newton, because you go just beyond the geosynchronous orbit of the Earth, And there is no gravity. You're floating around in free space. So what happened? Well, now you're outside the pressure band place where this expanding matter is expanding into space-time, warping it in some pressure envelope around it, spherical pressure envelope, which right at the edge, there's a place where you either fall to the Earth or you fall out to space. And if you put a satellite right there, it'll just hover there, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what we do. So I think McCutcheon's theory explains this concept of gravity better than an attractive force between bodies, like on a tetherball pole. Okay, I don't believe that theory is accurate from Newton. So it's pretty radical. But when you read this book and as a scientist really think about the physics from mechanics, especially, you'll have a hard time disagreeing with what he's saying. At least I did.
Sure. Well, if you're okay with that, Gerald, I'm going to play out Emerald Tablet number 2 to finish off the first half of the show, and we'll go to break. And
I think that's perfect.
And we'll reconvene after the break, Gerald, for the Emerald Tablet Part 3. So let me play this clip, Gerald, for the audience so they can get an idea of exactly what we've been talking about.
Okay, perfect, buddy. I'll talk to you after the break.
Tablet 2, the Halls of Amenti. According to Thoth, mankind was observed to be enslaved, and an intervention plan was hatched, causing 32 of the Anunnaki benevolent observers to intercede on our behalf. According to the tablet, their higher dimensional energy was used to manifest in a container body here on Earth, plotting to free the enslaved primitive workers caught up in the toils of the holographic simulator. During their mission, it appears that significant guarded underground structures were carved deep within the Earth, established as their residences away from their primitive workers. Within the underground chamber, Thoth said he placed a frequency emanating crystal to drive back the one installed by the Dark Ones. This is the basis for the Flower of Life symbol written about by Drunvalo Melchizedek, whose emitted rays bathe the 32 children of light living therein. The energy appears to renew their manifested bodies. How interesting. Additionally, the masters living underground have the ability to astral project out of their bodies to have encounters with mankind. Specifically, they can occupy the primitive worker containers in order to teach and guide them in their evolutionary spiritual paths. It is claimed who grow out of darkness are the ones they seek to help, guiding them by wisdom and knowledge to become a master of life, able to dwell with the infinite helping agents in their radiant underground rejuvenation hall. An additional 7 lords sharing their mission, hailing from the space-time above, are described seated within the Flower of Life radiating device in the same hall. A final cast of 9 additional beings are also presented to assist in Thoth's mission. He affiliates them with planetary cycles, probably similar to the Satya Yuga and Kali Yuga time-tracking mechanisms. The lead agent owns the cycle appointed over cycle account managers 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. These entities, a total of 7, coincide with the human quantized consciousness levels described as chakras. They are the consciousness cops that judge and weigh the spiritual readiness of the seeker before permitting progression to the next nerve ganglia or chakra. Thoth expounds on his ascendancy path to meet the master, at which time he specifies the work he wants to do as an infinite being, able to come and go as he pleases, freed from the halls of Amenti, renewing his life force in the Flower of Life renewal chamber at will. Let me be a teacher of men, leading them to the light. I am thankful for his decision not to abandon the primitive workers who have toiled and suffered greatly in darkness. Deep in the earth's heart lie the halls of Amenti, far neath the islands of sunken Atlantis, halls of the dead and halls of the living, bathed in the fire in the infinite all. Far in a pastime lost in the space-time, the children of light look down on the world, seeing the children of men in their bondage, bound by the force that came from beyond. Knew they that only by freedom from bondage could man ever rise from the earth to the sun. Down they descended and created bodies, taking the semblance of men as their own. The masters of everything said after their forming, "We are they who were formed from the space dust, partaking of life from the infinite all, living in the world as children of men, like and yet unlike the children of men. Then for a dwelling place far neath the earth's crust, blasted great spaces they by their power, spaces apart from the children of men. Surrounded them by forces and power, shielded from harm they the dead. Side by side, then, placed they their other spaces, filled them with life and with light from above. Builded they then the halls of Amenti, that they might dwell eternally there, living with life to eternity's end. 32 were there of the children, sons of light, who had come among men, seeking to free from the bondage of darkness those who were bound by the force from beyond. Deep in the halls of life grew a flower, flaming, expanding, driving backward the night. Placed in the center a ray of great potence, life-giving, light-giving, fifth power all who came near it. Placed they around it thrones 32, places for each of the children of light. Placed so that they were bathed in the radiance, filled with the life from the eternal light. There time after time placed they their first created bodies, so that they might be filled with the spirit of life. 100 years out of each 1,000 must the life-giving light flame forth on their bodies, quickening, awakening the spirit of life. There in the circle from eon to eon sit the great masters, living a life not known among men. There in the halls of life they lie sleeping, free flows their soul through the bodies of men. Time after time where their body lies sleeping, incarnate they in the bodies of men, teaching and guiding onward and upward, out of the darkness into the light. There in the hall of life, filled with their wisdom, known not to the races of man, living forever neath the cold fire of life, sit the children of light. Times there are when they awaken, come from the depths to be lights among men, infinite they among finite men. He who by progress has grown from the darkness, lifted himself from the night into light. Free is he made of the halls of Amenti, free of the flower of the light of life. Guided he then by wisdom and knowledge, passes from men to the master of life. There he may dwell as one with the masters, free from the bonds of the darkness of night. Seated within the flower of radiance sit 7, lords from the space-times above us, helping and guiding through the infinite wisdom, the pathway through time of the children of men. Mighty and strange they veiled with their power, silent, all-knowing, drawing the life force, different yet one with the children of men, aye, different and yet one with the children of light. Custodians and watchers of the force of man's bondage, ready to loose when the light has been reached. First and most mighty sits the veiled presence, Lord of lords, the infinite 9, over the other from each the lords of the cycles. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, each with his mission, each with his powers, guiding, directing the destiny of man. There sit they, mighty and potent, free of all time and space. Not of this world they yet akin to it, elder brothers they, of the children of men. Judging and weighing they but with their wisdom, watching the progress of light among men. There before them was I led by the dweller, watched him blend with one from above. Then he came forth a voice saying, Great art thou, Thoth, among children of men. Free henceforth of the halls of Amenti, master of life among children of men. Taste not death, except as thou will it. Drink thou of life to eternity's end. Henceforth forever is life thine for the taking. Henceforth is death at the call of thy hand. Dwell here or leave here when thou dost desire it. Free as Amenti to the Son of Man. Take thou up life in what form thou desireth, child of the light that has grown among men. Choose thou thy work, for all must labor, never be free from the pathway of light. One step thou hast gained on the long pathway upward, infinite now is the mountain of light. Each step thou takest but heightens the mountain, all of thy progress but lengthens the goal. Approach ye ever the infinite wisdom, ever before ye receives the goal. Free are ye made now of the halls of Amenti, to walk hand in hand with the lords of the world, one in one purpose, working together, bring of light to the children of men. Then from his throne came one of the masters, taking my hand and leading me onward through the halls of the deep hidden land. Led me through the halls of Amenti, showing the mysteries that are known not to man. Through the dark passage down he led me, into the hall where sit the dark death. Vast as space lay the great hall before me, walled by darkness but yet filled with light. Before me arose a great throne of darkness. Veiled on it sat a figure of night. Darker than darkness sat the great figure, dark with a darkness not of the night. Before it then paused the Master, speaking the word that brings about life, saying, O Master of darkness, guide of the way from life unto life, before thee I bring a son of the morning. Touch him not ever with the power of night. Call not his flame to the darkness of night. Know him and see him, one of our brothers, lifted from darkness into the light. Release thou his frame from its bondage, free let it flame through the darkness of night. Raised then the hand of the figure, forth came a flame that grew clear and bright, rolled back swiftly the curtain of darkness, unveiled the hall from the darkness of night. Then grew in the great space before me, flame after flame from the veil of the night. Uncounted millions leaped they before me, some flaming forth as flowers of fire. Others there were that shed a dim radiance, flowing but faintly from out of the night. Some there were that faded swiftly, others that grew from a small spark of light, each surrounded by its dim veil of darkness, yet flaming with light that could never be quenched. Coming and going like fireflies in springtime, filled they with space, with light and with life. Then spoke a voice mighty and solemn, saying, These are the lights that are souls among men, growing and fading, existing forever, changing yet living through life into death. When they have bloomed into flower, reached the zenith of growth in their life, swiftly then send I my veil of darkness, shrouding and changing to new forms of life. Steadily upward through the ages growing, expanding into yet another flame, lighting the darkness with yet greater power, quenched yet unquenched by the veil of the night. So grows the soul of man ever upward, quenched yet unquenched by the darkness of night. I, death, come, and yet I remain not, for life eternal exists in the all. Only an obstacle, I in the pathway, quick to be conquered by the infinite light. Awaken, O flame that burn ever inward, flame forth and conquer the veil of the night. Then in the midst of the flames, in the darkness, grew there one that drove forth the night, flaming, expanding, ever brighter, until at last was nothing but light. Then spoke my guide, the voice of the Master, See your own soul as it grows in the light, free now forever from the Lord of the night. Forward he led me through many great spaces, filled with the mysteries of the children of light, mysteries that man may never yet know of until he too is a son of the light. Backward then he led me into the light of the hall of the light. Knelt I then before the great masters, lords of all from the cycles above. Spoke he then with words of great power, saying, Thou hast made free of the halls of Amenti. Choose thou thy work among the children of men. Then spoke I, O great master, let me be a teacher of men, leading them onward and upward until they, too, are lights among men, freed from the veil of the night that surrounds them, flaming with light that shall shine among men. Spoke to me then the voice, Go as yet will, so be it decreed. Master are ye of your destiny, free to take or reject it at will. Take ye the power, take ye the wisdom, shine as a light among the children of men. Upward then led me the dweller, dwelt I again among the children of men, teaching and showing some of my wisdom, son of the light, a fire among men. Now I tread the path downward, seeking the light in the darkness of night. Hold ye and keep ye, preserve my record, guide shall it be to the children of men.
You're very welcome back to Capricorn Radio. This is your host James, and I am talking to Gerald R. Clark. He is the author of Seventh Planet Mercury Rising, and that is what we are discussing today. Of course, you can check out Gerald at geraldclark77.com. Check out his symposium in Mexico, in the Yucatan, his blog, and everything else there. You with me, Gerald?
I'm with you, buddy. How do you hear me?
I hear you clear. It's great to have you back, Gerald. Great to hear Tablet 2 there, to tie everything in what we just talked about. Of course, we're going to look into Tablet 3 now as well, for the second half of the show. Yeah, tablet 3, the key of wisdom, Gerald. Wisdom is power, knowledge is power. Knowledge and wisdom is not necessarily the same thing. And there will be power-hungry people out there who understand this, and there will be people that don't care about knowledge. But, knowledge and wisdom is not necessarily the same thing, Gerald. For me, knowledge is facts, data, stuff like that, and wisdom is how to use that. Not just to know the knowledge, but how to use it, utilize it for the benefit of hopefully good. Hopefully for the benefit of something good, but that's normally what you would use wisdom for. But would it be right to say that, Gerald? Is that what we're going to talk about?
Yeah, I was going to just connect a couple dots for you. Remember we talked about the hillbilly rules of learning where you do the rote understanding, application, and correlation. Well, I think the application is equivalent to knowledge. See, when you apply the knowledge with experience, it leads to wisdom. So I think that's kind of like equivalent to the correlation level, if you will. So I think we're in agreement. But knowledge and wisdom are not the same. Knowledge is like a fact in the theory. A fact is only a fact in the theory. So
sure.
So I think knowledge is like a building block coupled with experience that produces wisdom.
Sure. Transmuting the ego, Gerald. This is some pride, subjugation of the ego. It's something I often talk about with a lot of people, and it's something I find it very, very difficult to get across to people. Number one, most people won't even admit that they have an ego. That's usually the egotistical people. They don't even see it and get how their ego plays out. It's something everybody has. And to even talk about the subjugation of the ego to some people, there's only going to be a handful of people you could talk to about that. Maybe let's talk about the importance of this, and this knowledge.
Yeah, well, I wanted to give you an example of, imagine Thoth took on this role in the last tablet where he says he wants to be mankind's teacher. And he pulls some students into the classroom, and he gets the real zealous ones in the front that, A, want to absorb what he has to say without any, acoustic problems hearing what he has to say. And then you've got the ones in the front that feel like they already know, or they'll sit in the back. They feel like they already know everything. This is your classic teenage phase that kids go through where they know it all and they won't listen to their parents, right? Mm-hmm. Well, in general, if you think about pride of knowledge, and not being open to the lessons that he's trying to teach you, he's telling you, well, that's a real impediment to gaining wisdom. So number one, overweening pride is a big problem, and it's a big part of the building up of an ego that many religions recognize as the real struggle in life to ascend is to be able to transmute your own ego and realize your connectedness to the source. So I think in that sense the ego is a false perception image of oneself relative to a community that is usually not very serving of the individual. So I could see why he would say that's a prerequisite. And also remember when we were talking about alchemy just earlier, that the two prerequisites to participate in this vertical relationship with them, like in the last end of the tablet, you're saying for those that work on transmuting the darkness of themselves, he's telling you these 32 plus Thoth can have these avatar experiences overtake your body and guide you in your actions or your thoughts to the place where you're waking up further. And I think a lot of people that are connecting that going, hey, that's happened to me, call it a synchronicity or whatever you will. But that happened to me. And I'm hearing this from lots of people as well. So I think that's real, and it also is discussed about Thoth being able to do this as well. So transmuting the ego turns out to be one of the prerequisites to having the alchemical interaction, which is with Thoth, what he's talking about here.
You got to be open to knowledge for this, Joe Gerald. You got to be an open individual.
What's that?
You got to be open to receive knowledge, and you got to be open to many sources. You got to open your heart, your mind. You got to, be a philosophical person, Gerald, to be in the running for this.
Well, yeah. I mean, one of the things he challenges you to do is when you obtain this knowledge that you discourse with the ignorant as well, the ones who don't know it, without judgment. So, he tells you, and that knowledge could come from any source, and not to be a judge of it, because you judge something and no one's going to with you at the same level anymore once you do that. Yeah, and one of the last, and actually he's kind of laying out through the whole tablet these generic rules for living that lead to wisdom. And one of the things other areas he talks about is challenging us to live an extraordinary life. And that was interesting to me because some time ago when I was a structural integrator, I got invited by a radio station out of Del Mar, California to participate with him in some advanced adult education. I think they called it landmark education. And so I went and participated, and I realized that one of the things they were asking people to do was to have a view of themselves to live an extraordinary life. And it had to do with ultimately finding their passion and sharing it with the community. Well, it turns out that shows up in this tablet, talking about living a heartfelt life such that you're on fire about what it shows up later, so I won't jump too far ahead. Sure. But as part of this extraordinary life, really what he's talking about is following this archetype, this hero's path that's embedded in us all. Remember, we talked about that as well in chapter 3 and 4.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a lot to that. So not settling for something that by looking at the spectrum of people who've gone through the simulator, that you can achieve great things in this life if you only sign up to the hero's path, right? That's what he's saying.
Sure.
So, the rules that he gives for living, I think, start crossing over with some of the New Testament teachings as well. So, kind of listen for that as you're hearing some of the advice he's telling you to ascribe to wisdom. Number 1, he says the most important of all the rules is love, and to follow your heart that will lead you to that. So, when he says follow your heart, think about the bioenergetic, the biosonic, all the electromagnetic interfaces your body has with your environment. Well, if you're attuned to that, then this gut feeling of right or wrong is intuitive. And that's what I think he means by following your heart. Because it generally doesn't lie to you. And he tells you to be law-abiding. I don't think that would apply to unethical or unjust laws, because the very next thing he tells you is to speak out or stand up to evil. So if you've got an evil law that's violating number 1, where you can follow your heart, I would say those are in contradiction, and he would support that. As a archetype, or not just men, but probably women as well, he says the greatest among men is evidenced by having knowledge and gentleness and sharing it with your broad community. So basically, finding what you're passionate about that leads to a great understanding. In other words, maybe even think of a pioneer getting a map and filling it out so that the community has a pass and knows where they can go through at a treacherous time of the year without being injured. So that's a service to the community. That kind of thing. So,
I can't help
and also that greatness that he's describing needs to be without pride. Okay, so it's not a prideful sharing. That's what makes number 4 great. Okay? And then he goes on to, and we mentioned this earlier, he further expounds on distinguishing energy from matter. And so, I think I've discussed the law of conservation of energy, where energy, to our knowledge, is neither created nor destroyed, it just changes state. So cymatic energy from a vibration can turn into a molecular structure for a crystal under certain pressure and temperature conditions, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe that's how crystals... And vice versa. A black hole can take into any matter, including photons, and absorb them and convert them to a different energy. Okay? So there's your matter recycling. It seems to be prevalent in most galaxies. So that being said, we're already, and I'll just lay this out there, we're already an immortal energy. as we're told in these tablets, we're an instance of the light beings, even though our light is occluded by darkness because it's done by design for you to break out of it. Okay, so it even named the first emerald tablet controller of your first chakra and tells you who it is, and his job is to do that. And I think that's going to come up. And I may have prematurely jumped to their other names from the Hindu culture, but I didn't go over each of their functions, and we can do that in here so you see what each one does to your consciousness steps. And now you understand them to be those places where energy is held in your body and your chakras.
I can't help think, Gerald, sorry to jump in, I can't help think, when you're talking about how to live and, follow your heart, law-abiding, I can't think of the Egyptians, the Book of the Dead, the weighing of the heart against the feather of truth, to keep that balance, to keep that communal, good-spirited nature there. Otherwise, you're going to answer in what we would kind of call purgatory. And I believe the biblical purgatory idea has been taken from the Book of the Dead. A lot of stuff has been taken from Egyptian culture and Sumerian. And again, the immortality, the Egyptians, they really believed they were star energy, that they were going to go back to the stars, that's where they came from and that's where they're going to. And this immortality,
that's such an interesting thing to think about a star, that it's a radiating energy. Well, that analogy is made in here that we're a dim star in the body that can be fanned into a flame that eventually becomes the thing that helps us distinguish energy and matter, such that Earth returns to Earth, but a light returns to light. So what he's telling you is the light that's in your body will return to the source, which is, representative of a star, the same energy that generates light. So, and that takes me back to my equation 5a that I did in talking about the maximum human energy. So as that equation starts approaching its maximum, he's telling you don't need a body anymore, a light being that's able to operate in the same dimensions they are.
Wonderful stuff, Gerald. Wonderful stuff. And let's talk the illusion of matter, because people are going to say to us, we're talking ascension, we're talking about energy and the conservation of energy, and that's, yes, it can be neither created nor destroyed. It only shifts from one form to the other. And if we think of ourselves in terms of spirit and energy, it's not a big jump to realize this stuff, even with our own accepted science, when you apply it. But people are trapped in this. People are trapped in this physical reality, Gerald. They knock on the table, they touch their walls, they touch everything around them. Everything is a physical touch. They just can't see it, and they can't.
Well, if you do the sight instead of the touch, it makes it easier to understand that you could be in an illusion of matter. And I did this one in later in one of the chapters where I was talking about, now suppose you're in a holographic reality and all of a sudden a tooth tiger shows up and you run back in your cave and you're fighting flight syndrome to see how you're going to respond and all, the counter move thing that somebody's watching you do. Okay, just imagine you're in a simulation. Now, for that predatory cat to show up, now, irrespective of whether it has the capability of interacting with you or it's only a hologram, that's a whole nother matter about whether it's solid or something you can put your hand through, right? Well, imagine now the game master made a mistake, and instead of instantiating the saber-toothed cat in the 400 to 700 nanometers where you could see it, they accidentally did it just a little outside of the visual spectrum, and you couldn't see it.
Wow.
You understand what I'm saying? So all of a sudden you can see, well, I could easily be in a hologram, excuse me just a second, and not be able to see entities that are in my domain. But then the next question is, okay, well, suppose they are in my visual spectrum. How do I reconcile the fact that I can knock on this table, this door, and it feels solid to me? How does that light turn into an entity that has the same characteristics as a solid object that I'm experiencing in my simulator that I don't know? Well, apparently, even in the Hunger Games, and where they were instantiating different forces or threats or animals in the simulation that could that could actually kill the game players. Well, how could that be? And I asked this question. It's the same question. How could you code some matter that interact with a being in what we're saying is a holographic simulation and actually interact with it physically and follow the laws of physics? Well, what if the animate being or predator that you manifest is done so in accordance with the same physics laws that manifested you? And that's where the veil gets lifted, is you realize the only way that can happen is that I was created the same way. And now you go back to the creation of the Adapa, this first avatar, and you go, well, it looks like they did that. They followed the laws of physics, because that being can clearly touch and feel things. He's out sailing in a boat. Okay, so
every time we mention Adapa and talk about him, I feel so bad for him, Gerald. I got to get counselling over this. I do. I got a heart for the guy. He was paraded around and made shameful. How dare they, Gerald? I get it, though. I do get it.
You must be carrying this around in your genetic code from this ancestral shaming and cowering that Irish warriors are not trained to do. So you're ready to overcome that for him, right?
Yeah.
So the illusion of matter, the idea that matter can be created from light and that it's an illusion and it can go away, that may be hard for us to wrap our head around, but science and physics, modern physics, agrees with that. So understanding that that's an illusion and that there's another energy field within your body that actually makes you into the energetic state that has the possibility of being like these 32 that turned into avatars. So imagine you turn into energy, and you're in an energy state. Can you then go into any host or take on any form like they say they can? Possibly.
Wow. So just on the illusion of matter as well. I mean, I want to talk quantum physics. I'm a quantum physicist guy, academically anyway. The inside of the most of the matter in the universe is although it's very physical to us and in our sense, and we can hit our metallic objects or wooden objects, it's all these atoms, the space in between them. The quantum world is so exotic. We don't even observe, electrons aren't really there until we observe them because of the superposition principle. It could be probably in 5 locations or 6 locations if it's kept in this trapped well, and it's mind-bending the more you get.
I don't want to jump into that yet because we're going to do that. But when we talk about these holographic models, and he talks about the law of time and the law of creation. Well, the law of creation is how do you take and create matter in the simulator? You understand that it's generated from light. Then the mystery is how does light get turned into matter? And that's what we're talking about. Is it a hologram or does it have solid texture like other matter? And then you realize, well, if you know how to create this other matter like a crystal that has solid form, but as you stated, is mostly space, but connected at these bonds, that give it form. All of a sudden, if you know how to create those bonds somehow using light, which is what we're saying, then you're into understanding the creator of all laws of the creation of matter. And that's really crazy. And I talk about that later in the book. Okay. And I've been thinking a lot about that because I realize that is the biggest holographic simulation buster of all, if you know what that is. And that's what they're doing in the Hunger Games. Okay. They're creating these beings in the simulation. I guess they do it. I'm trying to think of whether they do it in Avatar as well. I haven't seen that one in a long time, but I know they do it in Hunger Games where they're all of a sudden there's no being there. And the next thing you know, they've manifested creatures, biological that can interact with the Katniss Everdeen and actually kill them. So, and if you think that's fantasy, I think it's not, because now I realize that they ought to realize that they're avatars as well. And were created the same way that these entities were. So, with that said, I think the activation of the Merkaba field in the human energy body is the way out of this breaking the illusion of matter. And we talked about that before.
Incredible, John. Incredible.
Yeah, so back to the control structure of these beings who are controlling the sequence at which you get to experience wisdom. And so this connects back to the previous tablet, is these lords of the cycles. And Thoth describes them as infinitely wise and never having had to take on a body. And I got a little confused about whether he was talking about 7 and an additional 9. Then I realized it was 3 through 9, which was 7 beings, so it's the same 7, okay? So there's 32 in the chamber, and there's 7 more in the chamber. And the 7 in the chamber are lords of the cycles, which you ask yourself, what does that mean? Well, apparently, if you think about our cycle of wobbling, such that we end up in a 25,920 year procession around the zodiacal house that we call a great year. Well, that's a wobble cycle. Well, one of these guys is in charge of a certain cycles like that. Right. So we were talking about the relationship of these lords of these cycles to a potential cycle like our great year. Mm-hmm. Well, there were other cycles as well that came from the Sanskrit writings referring to the Satya Yuga and the Kali Yuga cycles that were related to other wobbles. So imagine that number 9 is coordinating all the sub-activities of these other ones in ascendancy of beings from other lower dimensions, parallel dimensions, and upper dimensions as these cycles come together and merge. And so later in the tablets, you're going to see that is actually what they're anticipating, is that all the cycles will merge together on one plane. So the 14 lower, the 9 parallel, and the ones that are above, that Thoth and Osiris and Isis that are participating in on Arulu, and other beings from other locations, that they'll all be merging into one consciousness plane. So that's kind of a crazy thing to think about. The actual functions of each one of the Emerald Tablet Cycle Masters, and let other people read that from the book, or it's in the I think it's also listed in the text itself. So let's not repeat it here. Let's let the text do that if we've only got a short time left, okay?
Sure. Yeah, well, like I said, we'll play out the Emerald Tablet 3 at the end of the show anyway, Gerald, so people get an idea.
Okay.
But
once before I said, we only went from Cycle Master 3 through 9, mapped to our 7 chakras. Well, I hypothesized that number 1 and number 2 were assigned to the lower 14 dimensions and the 9 parallel dimensions. So that's just a theory of mine, but I think I'll put it out there and see if anybody has any agreement or disagreement with that. So that leaves 7 of these lords of the cycles, 3 through 9, that map to the 7 states or chakras of consciousness that we experience here on Earth in this dimension. So our avatar has access to these 7 energy states, 3 through 9.
So our avatar,
Sorry,
Gerald. Basically, our avatar, our body, our vehicle, has only got a certain capacity or a limit function of so many chakras, so many things to do. But like I say, when we do escape this body, we can get into another dimension and much more things, basically.
I agree. And one of the things he tells you about why wisdom is so important, you're developing your intellectual life. In the previous section, he tells you that the mind is the junction place between the mind and the spirit. So your intellect is the crossover place between those two. So he tells you that's very important, such that you need to be able to focus that mental power on one thing or thought, which turns into a frequency, and the frequency is your mapping point to dimension. So think about dimension as being first a brainwave pattern that takes you to that dimension that's accessible through your energy body, and then actually separating and going there. So it has a lot to do with mental focus. And when you read the Journeys Out of the Body training by Robert Monroe, a lot of it has to do with being able to visualize on a narrow internal reference that you don't lose in order to let your body fall asleep so that you can experience your energy state when you're out of your body. So that has to do with mental training as well. And a lot of the Eastern Buddhists, and whether it's Zazen meditation or what have you, have to learn to do a single mantra or such to focus their mind to achieve the same borderland state that I believe has to do with transcendental meditation. So we're told to follow our heart, this internal feeling of what's right, to essentially do more than what's commanded of us. So he wants you to live an extraordinary life, not just settle. And this is the second time this comes up, right? But I used to consider a way of working as under promising and over delivering.
Sure.
And I think that's the same thing that he's saying here. And if you follow your heart in a space that you're really excited about and it makes you want to get out of bed and do it every day, then you're going to be more enthusiastic about it, and you're going to over deliver. So that's the whole point, and then the target of that delivery is your community that you're serving. And when you start, I'm just going to make a comment on this. When you start operating from that standpoint, not just gaining money so you can build up your own security so you can have a safe retirement, but you're garnering knowledge or something that's good for your community and then passionately sharing with it, that's what he's saying he wants you to do.
Incredible.
And he's saying, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Sorry, no, the more I think about this, Gerald, and when I sit on these shows and I can feel my own evolution of knowledge enhancing, we're talking spiritual technology here, Gerald, and I don't mean that lightly. I mean sophisticated spiritual technology, and it's almost like, if you want to put that into actually some words of what that actually means instead of a phrase, it's basically a technological aspect to spiritual knowledge. The use of it for some actual benefit. Think about we're coming into the age of Pisces, and the glyph for the Pisces in an astrological sense is the spirit world on one side and the material world on the other. And that glyph, that run of the ladder, the H symbol, basically the run of the ladder ties one side to the other. And most Pisces will either be stuck on one side or the other. And sometimes the genius Pisces are the ones that are able to go between the spirit world and the material world and able to run along that glyph. And it's so funny that we're coming into the age of Pisces now.
We're
leaving the age of Pisces and we're coming
leaving the age of Pisces,
because we're going to
I know what you're talking about. And for those who want to go look at the zodiacal stuff that I just put up, it's on my blog, and I think I put it on my Facebook page. Mm-hmm. So it shows you the different ages of Pisces and Aquarius, and I believe 2012, 2013, according to my research, is we entered the first degree of Aquarius. So sure. I'm pretty convinced we're entering a new age, and it has a lot to do with the New World Order changes and the change in the Anunnaki Council, which I wrote about in my first book. Usually when the zodiacal change, that was their Anunnaki term limits for a particular ruler. And it still seems to go on, and it seems to ping pong back and forth between Enki and Enlil's kids on who's on that Lord of the Earth position, and that's what matters. Whoever's on that, setting the rules, okay?
Wow.
So, we're waste time. And, waste time, doing things that aren't coincident with where your heart tells you, what you're pursuing your dream, because he says it makes your heart weary, and that's a complete waste of time. Excuse me. So if you're having trouble getting out of bed in the morning to do your mission, whatever it is you're doing, your heart's not in it. Just be honest. Find something that is. It may not give you the same money, but he's telling you right here, follow your heart. And do what you know is right for your path. Otherwise, it's wasting your time.
Wow. Incredible stuff, Gerald.
And one other thing comes from the dweller. He's told that labor is necessary in this dimension. Excuse me.
Sure. And like I say on the spiritual technology thing, it doesn't matter if we're talking about Thoth the Atlantean or ancient Egypt and all the artifacts that they had and all the knowledge and all the vast migration that they could do in the afterlife. And people think they were a cult of the dead and they were obsessed with death, but they weren't. They were obsessed with spirituality. They were obsessed with the spiritual technology that they had access to. And of course, death is a part of that. If your spirit comes in and out of your body, well, I'm sorry, you're going to have to tackle the age-old problem of death and reincarnation. I mean, it's to blame them as a cult of the dead. And even the Sumerian records, like we've been talking about as well, Gerald, you know, this is an ascension knowledge, a spiritual knowledge, spiritual technology, if you want to coin that term. Very sophisticated, Gerald, very sophisticated.
Yeah, here's one that's kind of controversial. In the tablet, we're told that love is the beginning and the end of the heart. So basically, he's telling you the greatest of these is love. Well, where do we hear that in the Bible? Well, that was in Corinthians, where it says faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. Right? Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden, you're seeing the same word show up again. We did the whole biblical Canaan derivation from previous Sumerian sources ad infinitum in the previous book, and people are still doing that because it's part of breaking the God spell, realizing, there was more than one being, and some of them wanted to help us, and some of them didn't. And getting that clear with, in relationship to the Anunnaki, really helps, especially when you realize the Thoth that we're talking about here is Ningshita, who's Enki's son. And Enki is Poseidon, the dweller in this Atlantean temple where he built it. And when you find out how he built it later in the tablets, using the power of Yolton, it is mind-bending. Truly mind-bending. The idea of becoming an avatar and going visiting bodies is one thing. Having the rules of the creator of all and manifesting matter, that's a whole nother realm, okay?
Sure.
But we're going to do that later. So, we're told that it's almost biblical lessons. The next one is don't judge your friends, else they'll avoid you. So he's saying if you sit down to find out something about a person, don't get it through gossip, get it firsthand. But if they won't open up to you firsthand, it's because you've already judged them. So these are pretty basic lessons for this horizontal relationship that we talked about previously in the simulator.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Another one, he tells you, don't repeat extravagant speech and don't listen to it. That if that's what's happening, the person's imbalanced. So, he's giving you like some wisdom rules, much like, you're told, in the New Testament by Jesus himself. And he's telling you more about, like the beatitudes, for instance. And I think it's in Matthew.
It's like it's an operating system to get you where you need to go, Gerald. It's a good, for what I see in the Everil tablets, Gerald, from what I see in them, from what I read, there's nothing bad in there. If everybody was to take some of this philosophy and kind of live by it, hey, the world would be in a much better place. So, I don't know, a lot of people are prejudiced against the Everil tablets, and
it's interesting. It either resonates with you. Well, he tells you that it's spoken in an Atlantean rhythm, and he makes it like a presumption that if the spirit is in you, that it'll resonate with this. Well, what does that mean if you study the Admiral Tablets and it doesn't resonate with you? Mm-hmm. Come to your own conclusion. I don't know what that means, but so the fact that it's kind of like in the Bible. It says, for those for eyes to see, let them see. For those with ears to hear, let them hear. Well, if you don't have eyes, you won't see. If you don't have ears, you won't hear. So if something in the tablets ain't for you, for some reason, you're not going to get it. And that part has to do with your soul path that I truly don't understand. Okay? but that's the best I can come up with. And then so he says, in response to that, he says, fools will scoff at knowledge, and death is their food. And so he talks about also later scoffing at his teachings in the Emerald Tablets. Highly recommend it.
Wow. Wonderful stuff, Gerald. Wonderful stuff. It's like it's a wonderful living code. Look at Hammurabi's law. It's in Sumerian. It's like, what's wrong trying to live by a code? What's wrong with like a code of life that doesn't harm anybody and betters you or betters your approach or attitude?
Yeah. Well, Solon was really impressed by the fact that in Atlantis they were living to, derive their highest character qualities, and that they didn't really hold money in high esteem. That, living the attributes of a hero was what they were after. And I think that's kind of interesting as well.
Yeah, wonderful. It's not a bad way to be, John. Not a bad way to be.
Well, I mean, it's like look at what Thoth just did. He said, "Well, I could come and go. I could be in this dimension if I wanted to. He's told he can take our body or leave it. And what does he do? He turns around and goes, "Well, I want to be the teacher of mankind, and I'll do whatever I have to do, being in the Halls of Amenti." That, by the way, it looks like the Lords of the Nine Cycles built. Thoth built an access way to it. He didn't actually build the Anyway, but it was noble what he did. He said, "No, these primitive workers are enslaved. We originally came here because we saw that their consciousness is being corrupted and they're being held down from being the light beings that they were designed to be. And we're going to intercede and fix that." And the fact that there were 32 of them and that he was number 33 and called the Master, I think is really, really an interesting thing to understand.
Wow.
Are you speechless?
Yeah, it is. The more I think about it, Gerald, it's, there's so much in the Emerald Tablets, and they're done in such a way that you go through them once and you'll take in a basic amount of knowledge. You'll understand the system of knowledge that's in there, and then when you get through them the second time, you'll understand the depth of it and the profound nature of what they are and what's in them. Like I say, there's nothing harmful in them. If anything, there's a nice living code of life, or a nice attitude or approach to life. It's some people call it esoteric, some people call it spiritual, some people call it whatever. Big deal. There's nothing harmful in there. It's all good for the betterment of mankind. And when you get through that, then you can actually get to the meaning of the knowledge. Then,
well, yeah,
third time.
As we go on, you're going to realize not only does he give you all the, kind of the rules of working in the simulator, but he tells you a way out of it too. And we're getting to that, so it creates a lot of hope, actually, because you see a lot of this darkness around you. He tells you it's part of the game. Even, and speaking of that, this being that we call the first one is Untanas. He tells you, as Enki and Thoth are there with him, going through this ritual, saying, don't ever bring his countenance to me and touch him with darkness anymore. He says, guess what? I'm only a temporary impediment, that light is the ultimate. And he actually states that in this, and you'll hear this in the tablet. So I think that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, for sure.
Actually, we already played that one, right? So he was telling you, I'm a temporary impediment. So expect that there's going to be darkness poured on your path when you're trying to live an extraordinary life. So that's part of it.
Yeah, well, I've pretty much accepted that. If you don't expect the world to be nice to you because that's what you want. Don't expect the world to embrace you because you're doing good.
Well, this is a very crazy junction point where that your thoughts are real things, and you want to live by the power of attraction. So you manifest what you want, but at the same time, there are entities in the simulator that are programmed to counter your mission. So it's not that you manifested that, but they were manifested for you as part of honing your mission. So it's part of the game. So when you see it like that, it makes you more awake and aware to look for your lesson and the way out when these things occur, rather than when something happens to you that you respond negatively and it takes you to a place that, the counter move had its effect. Well, you're to try and transmute. Every time you see a situation like that, lemons to lemonade. Just think that. See what it is you could do to be the hero of a situation, to overcome and grow in some way. There usually is a way where you'll see it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm at the top of the second hour, Gerald. Unless there's anything else you want to add before I play the Tablet 3?
Well, I think we've done plenty of analysis of it, and I think the tablet is very clear on its message. So if you're okay with it, maybe we can say goodnight and cue up Emerald Tablet with commentary.
Okay, Gerald, Tablet 3 on the way.
All right, buddy. Well, let's do this again. What do you say, another week or so out? We'll plan another one?
Well, I've got a trip to Stuttgart, and probably on about April 14th we can, Gerald.
Sounds perfect. Okay.
Okay, for now we'll play out tablet 3 of the Emerald tablets by Gerald Clark. GeraldClark77.com, CapricornRadio.com for the show and the archives.
Tablet 3, the Key of Wisdom. Thoth points out the importance of wisdom, equating it with power, and for humans to avoid the ego trap of being prideful, remaining open to knowledge irrespective of the source. We are counseled to follow our hearts, living an extraordinary life of love, abiding by the law, and to stand up against evil. Greatness among men is characterized by possessing knowledge and gentleness and sharing it with the broad community. A clue to start the path to freedom is to distinguish by study the difference between matter and energy. The energetic key to immortality is specified, similar to our physics concept of the law of conservation of energy. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. It merely changes state, which is true for us electrical meat modems, which they designed as well. We are analyzed through having a star in our body that can be spawned to a bright flame, leading to the understanding that we are energy derived from the infinite one. Matter is designated as a transient mirage. Continuity and change are the wheels in perpetual motion. The 7 seated in the Flower of Life chamber, mentioned in the previous tablet, the Masters of the Cycles, are listed along with their specific functional roles. The numbers assigned to the beings appear to coincide with a total of 9 galactic or planetary cycles, only 7 which are present, ranging from 3 to 9, versus 1 to 7. I believe these beings are affiliated with the Mayan underworld frequencies 9. Therefore, the numbers could represent the Mayan 3rd sun cycle to the 9th sun cycle. This would imply our chakra frequencies are controlled by them, similar to what I disclosed in the Anunnaki of Nibiru, with the added affiliation that the Hindu gods were functionally controlling the same quantized energy levels for their flock. Could the 7 masters of space-time cycles have an AKA name as a Hindu deity? Probably so. Let us continue. I, Thoth the Atlantean, give of my wisdom, give of my knowledge, give of my power. Freely I give to the children of men. Give that they too might have wisdom to shine through the world from the veil of the night. Wisdom is power, and power is wisdom, one with each other, perfecting the whole. Be thou not proud, O man, in thy wisdom. Discourse with the ignorant as well as the wise. If one comes to thee full of knowledge, listen and heed, for wisdom is all. Keep thou not silent when evil is spoken, for truth like the sunlight shines above all. He who oversteppeth the law shall be punished, for only through law freedom of men. Cause thou not fear, for fear is bondage, a fetter that binds the darkness to men. Follow thine heart during thy lifetime. Do thou more than is commanded of thee. When thou hast gained riches, follow thou thine heart, for all these are of no avail if thine heart be weary. Diminish thou not the time of following thine heart, it is a board of the soul. They that are guided go not astray, but they that are lost cannot find a straight path. If thou go among men, make for thyself love the beginning and the end of the heart. If one cometh unto thee for counsel, let him speak freely, that the thing for which he hath come to thee may be done. If he hesitates to open his heart to thee, it is because thou the judge doeth the wrong. Repeat thou not extravagant speech, neither listen now to it, for it is the utterance of one not in equilibrium. Speak thou not of it, so that he before thee may know wisdom. This is of great profit. An abundance of speech profiteth nothing. Exalt not thine heart above the children of men, lest it be brought lower than the dust. If thou be great among men, be honored for knowledge and gentleness. If thou seekest to know the nature of a friend, ask not his companion, but pass a time alone with him. Debate with him, testing his heart, words, and his bearing. That which goeth into the storehouse must come forth, and the things that are in thine must be shared with a friend. Knowledge is regarded by the fool as ignorance, and the things that are profitable are to him hurtful. He liveth in death, it is therefore his food. The wise man lets his heart overflow, but keeps his mouth. O man, list to the voice of wisdom, list to the voice of light. Mysteries there are in the cosmos that unveiled fill the world with their light. Let he who would be free from the bonds of darkness first divine the material from the immaterial, the fire from the earth. For know ye that as earth descends to earth, so also fire ascends unto fire, and becomes one with fire. He who knows the fire that is within, himself shall ascend unto the eternal fire, and dwell in it eternally. Fire, the inner fire, is the most potent of all force, for it overcometh all things, and penetrates all things of the earth. Man supports himself only on that which resists. So earth must resist man, else he existeth not. All eyes do not see with the same vision, for to one an object appears of one form and color, and to a different eye of another. So also the inner fire, changing from color to color, is never the same day to day. Thus speak I Thoth of my wisdom, for a man is a fire burning bright through the night, never is quenched in the veil of darkness, never is quenched by the veil of the night. Into men's hearts I looked by my wisdom, found them not free from the bondage of strife. Free from the toils, thy fire, O my brother, lest it be buried in the shadow of night. Hark ye, O man, and list to this wisdom. Where do name and form cease? In consciousness, invisible, an infinite force of radiance bright. The form that ye create by brightening thy vision are truly effects that follow thy cause. Man is a star bound to a body until in the end he is freed through his strife. Only by struggle and toiling thy utmost shall the star within thee bloom out in new life. He who knows the commencement of all things, free is his star from the realm of night. Remember, O man, that all which exists only by another form of that which exists not. Everything that has being is passing into yet other being, and thou thyself art not an exception. Consider the law, for all is law. Seek not that which is not of the law, for such exists only in the illusion of the senses. Wisdom comes to all her children, even as they cometh unto wisdom. All through the ages the light has been hidden. Awake, O man, and be wise. Deep in the mysteries of life have I traveled, seeking and searching for that which is hidden. List ye, O man, and be wise. Far neath the earth crust in the halls of Amenti, mysteries I saw that are hidden from men. Oft have I journeyed the deep hidden passage, looked on the light that is life among men. There neath the flower of life ever living, searched I the hearts of the secrets of men. Found I that man is but living in darkness, light of the great fire is hidden within. Before the lords of hidden Amenti, learned I the wisdom I give unto thee. Masters are they of the great secret wisdom, brought from the infinity's end. 7 are they, the lords of Amenti, overlords they of the children of morning, sons of the cycles, masters of wisdom. Formed are they not as the children of men. 3, 4, 5, and 6, 7, 8, 9 are the titles of the masters of men. Far from the future, formless yet forming, came they as teachers. Live they forever, yet not of the living, bound not to life, and yet free from death. Rule they forever with infinite wisdom, bound yet not to the dark halls of death. Life they have in them, yet life that is not life. Free from all are the lords of the all. Forth from they came, forth from the Logos, instruments they of the power o'er all. Vast is their countenance, yet hidden in smallness, formed by a form, known yet unknown. 3 holds the keys of all hidden magic, creator he of the halls of the dead, sending forth power, shrouding with darkness, blinding the souls of the children of men. Sending the darkness, blinding the soul force, director of negative to the children of men. 4 is he who loses the power, Lord he is of life to the children of men. Light is his body, flame is his countenance, freer of souls to the children of men. 5 is the master, Lord of all magic, key to the word that resounds among men. 6 is the Lord of light, the hidden pathway, path of the souls of the children of men. 7 is he who is Lord of the vastness, master of space and the key of the times. 8 is he who orders progress, weighs and balances the journeys of men. 9 is the Father, vast he is of countenance, forming and changing from out of the formless. Meditate on the symbols I give thee. Keys are they, though hidden from men. Reach ever upward, O soul of the morning. Turn thy thoughts upward to light and to life. Find in the key of the numbers I bring thee, light on the pathway from life unto life. Seek ye wisdom, turn thy thoughts inward, close thy mind to the flower of light. Place in thy body a thought-formed picture, think of the number that leads thee to life. Clear is the pathway to he who has wisdom. Open the door to the kingdom of light. Pour forth thy flame as the sun of the morning. Shut out the darkness and live in the day. Take thee, O man, as part of thy being. The 7 who are but are not as they seem. Opened, O man, have I my wisdom. Follow the path and the way I have led. Masters of wisdom, son of the morning, light the children of men.